If you don't like suspense and want to know more before you read Tagore's story, let me read an interview to you that asks all the questions. Don't worry, it isn't a spoiler. Listen along as I read now. Interviewer: is it a happy story? Gemini: no, it is not a happy story. It's a rather poignant and tragic tale that explores themes of identity, societal perception, and the confinement faced by women in that era. The protagonist, Kadambini, experiences a profound alienation and ultimately a tragic end after being mistakenly declared dead. It's known for its psychological depth and the sense of existential confusion it evokes. Interviewer: sounds scary. Is it a horror story? Gemini: while it has elements that might feel unsettling or psychologically disturbing, it is not typically classified as a horror story in the traditional sense, like a ghost story with jump scares, monsters, or overt supernatural threats designed to terrify. The scary aspect comes from the psychological terror and existential dread experienced by the protagonist, Kadambini. Her living burial, the societal rejection, and her struggle to prove her own existence are deeply unsettling. The horror comes from the profound isolation and the breakdown of identity. The story also highlights the chilling indifference and prejudice of society, particularly towards a woman in her position. This social judgment and the inability of others to accept her truth can be very disturbing. Tagore creates an atmosphere of alienation and confusion which can be disquieting. Kadambini's struggle to find her place after being declared dead is a source of profound sadness and unease. So, while it's certainly not a light or cheerful read and can evoke feelings of fear and discomfort, it's more of a psychological drama with tragic elements than a horror tale. Interviewer: so it's mystical? Gemini: no, it is not mystical. While it deals with the strange situation of someone being thought dead and then reappearing, it doesn't involve magic, spirits, or supernatural forces in a mystical way. The strangeness comes from the psychological and social reactions to an unusual event and the tragic consequences for the individual involved. It's grounded in human experience and societal dynamics, not mysticism. Interviewer: is it a mystical society? Because otherwise how do they think someone alive is dead? Gemini: that's a very good question that gets right to the heart of why the story is so unsettling. No, the society depicted in the story is not mystical in the sense of regularly believing in magic or supernatural occurrences as explanations for everyday events. The mistaken belief that Kadambini is dead arises from a combination of circumstances and the practices of the time, not mysticism. Kadambini appears to die suddenly and unexpectedly. In that era, medical knowledge and diagnostics were not as advanced as today. People might have pronounced someone dead based on lack of pulse or breathing, especially if they were in a deep faint, coma, or had a condition that mimicked death. The story also suggests a quick or unverified funeral or disposal of the body, typical of a time when preserving bodies was not standard and quick rites were common, especially in rural settings or if there was a perceived risk of disease. Once someone is declared dead and rites are performed, there's a strong social and psychological barrier to accepting their return. It's too disruptive to norms, beliefs, and even superstitions. People would rather believe in a ghost or a delusion than admit such a grave error, especially if it implicates their own actions. So, the confusion isn't due to the society being mystical, but rather due to a lack of modern medical verification, quick traditional practices, and the powerful psychological and social resistance to overturning a declared truth. It's the human reaction to the inexplicable, rather than a mystical worldview, that drives the plot. Interviewer: is she buried alive? Gemini: yes, in a way. Kadambini is buried alive in the story. The story implies she is pronounced dead and placed in a situation equivalent to being interred, or disposed of, only to regain consciousness. While the exact details of the burial might be open to subtle interpretation, e.g., whether it's a full burial or placement in a specific area for the deceased, the core of the psychological horror and tragedy comes from her waking up to find herself in a state where she's believed dead and effectively cut off from the living world. She escapes her apparent grave a resting place, reinforcing the buried alive aspect of her ordeal. Interviewer: so when people see her after the funeral, they think she is a zombie. Gemini: That's a very good way to phrase the fear. While the term zombie, as we understand it today, a reanimated, flesh-eating corpse, wasn't part of Bengali folklore, or the specific cultural understanding of that time, people in the story absolutely react to her as if she is something supernatural and terrifying, like a ghost or an unquiet spirit that has returned from the dead. When they see her, their reaction is one of immense fear, panic, and superstitious dread. They don't think of her as a living person who was mistaken for dead. Instead, their minds jump to a ghost to boot. This is the most common interpretation in traditional Indian folklore for someone who returns after being declared dead. A person's spirit might linger or return, often with malevolent intent or because they haven't found peace, an ill omen. Her reappearance is seen as deeply unnatural and disturbing, bringing bad luck or portending misfortune, a delusion. Some might believe they are hallucinating or that she is not truly there, due to the shock and the impossibility of the situation in their minds. So, while not calling her a zombie, their fear is very similar in intensity and in the belief that she is no longer truly living in the human sense. They perceive her as an entity from the realm of the dead, causing terror and rejection. Interviewer: can they touch and feel her? Or do they never get close enough to find out if she is an apparition? Gemini: this is a crucial point that adds to the story's tragedy. In the story, the people who see Kadambini after her return do not get close enough or dare to touch her to find out if she is an apparition. Their fear and superstitious dread are so overwhelming that they immediately recoil, scream, or flee. They perceive her as a supernatural entity, the ghost or spirit, and their terror prevents any attempt at rational verification. This swift and absolute rejection, based purely on fear and superstition, is a key element of the story's tragedy, as it seals her fate as an outcast, unable to prove her living reality. Interviewer: the good news is she was able to escape the internment. Gemini: yes, that's absolutely true. The good news, if one can call it that in such a tragic tale, is that Kadambini does escape from the place where she was left for dead. She manages to get out of what was effectively her burial or resting place. However, her escape from internment only leads her to a different kind of confinement: the social isolation and psychological torment of being a person believed to be dead in a world that refuses to acknowledge her life. Her physical freedom doesn't bring her peace or acceptance, which is where the story's true tragedy lies.